The massive crystal doors of the Galactic Council chamber exploded inward as Ambassador Tae-ho stumbled through them. His usually perfect diplomatic robes were wrinkled, his face pale with terror. The assembled alien representatives turned their various eyes, sensors, and attention organs toward him as he gasped for breath. "They're here," Tae-ho whispered. Then louder, "The humans are here." The chamber erupted in chaos. Council Speaker Veltar's tentacles writhed in confusion while the crystalline delegate's form flickered with alarm colors. In the far corner, the ethereal representative simply vanished in a puff of worried smoke. "Impossible," clicked War Speaker, Thalax of the Vrex Empire, his insect-like mandibles chattering. "Our scouts reported no signs of spacefaring civilization from that sector." Tae-ho activated his datapad with shaking hands. The holographic display showed 12 massive shapes moving through space like metal mountains. Each ship was easily 5 times larger than the biggest Vrex dreadnought, bristling with weapon systems that made no sense to galactic military doctrine. 12 battleships, Tae-ho said quietly. "They call it an exploration fleet." Across the galaxy, Fleet Admiral Kyung-soo stood on the bridge of the Terran battleship Indomitable Spirit, completely unaware of the panic he was causing. His dark eyes studied the star charts with excitement, rather than conquest on his mind. After decades of searching, humanity had finally found proof they weren't alone in the universe. "Tactical report, So-young," he said to his officer. Lieutenant So-young looked up from her console, her face bright with enthusiasm. "Sensor contacts throughout the system, Admiral. Definitely artificial. We're looking at a genuine galactic civilization. Chief." Engineer Dong-hyun wiped grease from his hands as he entered the bridge. "Reactors are running smooth, sir. All 12 ships ready for whatever we find out there." Kyung-soo nodded approvingly. Humanity had learned hard lessons from their turbulent history. When you ventured into the unknown, you went prepared. The 12 battleships of Exploration Fleet Alpha represented the best of human engineering and the hopes of an entire species. "Dr. Minna, are your first contact protocols ready?" Kyung-soo asked the expedition's lead xenobiologist. Dr. Minna smiled, clutching her carefully prepared presentation materials. "Ready as we'll ever be, Admiral. I've got cultural exchange programs, gift packages, even some of Earth's greatest music to share." What none of them knew was that their gift of human music, including the 1812 overture complete with canon sound effects, was already being analyzed by panicked alien intelligence services as some kind of artillery-based communication system. Back at the Galactic Council, the emergency session was spiraling into barely controlled terror. The Keltharian delegate, a peaceful mammal-like creature, was hyperventilating into a breathing apparatus. "Look at these weapon readings," wheezed the Keltharian through his translator. "Those aren't exploration tools. Those are planet crackers." War Speaker Thalax studied the data with growing unease. His species had conquered half their galaxy through superior military technology, but these human ships made his finest warships look like children's toys. The energy signatures alone suggested reactors powerful enough to glass an entire world. Why would an exploration mission need weapons capable of destroying solar systems? Asked the silicon-based representative from the Kristek Republic. Ambassador Tae-ho had no answers. His first contact team had been monitoring human broadcasts for months, trying to understand their culture. What they'd found was disturbing. A species that seemed to celebrate conflict, glorify warfare, and treat violence as entertainment. Their historical records were filled with nothing but war, conquest, and destruction. "Perhaps," suggested the ethereal delegate, reforming from nervous smoke, "they don't understand the concept of peaceful exploration." On the human ships, the crews were making final preparations for what they hoped would be the most important moment in human history. Captain Jae-won of the battleship Righteous Fury was reviewing first contact procedures with his senior staff. "Remember," he told his officers, "we represent all of humanity out here. We need to show them we're peaceful, civilized people who just want to be good neighbors." His weapons officer, Lieutenant Commander Hae-jin, nodded seriously. "I've prepared a cultural presentation, sir. Earth's greatest military marches to show our artistic heritage." "Excellent thinking," Jae-won approved. "Nothing says peaceful intentions like sharing our culture." Neither of them realized that their definition of cultural sharing would soon be interpreted as war chants by species that had evolved from prey animals. Chief Engineer Boram was equally enthusiastic about demonstrating human technological achievement. "Sir, when they see our reactor efficiency ratings, they'll understand how advanced human civilization has become. These power cores can supply energy for an entire city." She had no way of knowing that the aliens would interpret "can power a city" as "can destroy a city" when filtered through translation software designed by species that had never developed weapons of mass destruction. The Galactic Council's emergency session stretched into its 8th hour as delegates tried to figure out how to deal with the approaching human fleet. Some suggested immediate military response, but the weapon readings from the human ships made that option suicidal. Others proposed evacuation of the border systems, which was already happening as word spread. "We could try to communicate," suggested a brave delegate from the peaceful assembly. "Perhaps they're reasonable beings who can be negotiated with." War Speaker Thalax's laugh was like breaking glass. "Look at their historical transmissions. This is a species that fights wars for entertainment, celebrates death in battle, and considers overwhelming firepower a sign of friendship. They're not coming to negotiate." The truth was more complex than any of them understood. Humanity had indeed fought terrible wars, but they'd learned from them. The massive battleships weren't symbols of aggression. They were insurance policies, built by a species that had learned the hard way that the universe could be a dangerous place. Dr. Min-Ah was putting finishing touches on her presentation about human philosophy and culture, completely unaware that her carefully prepared materials about competitive sports, military history, and humanity's warrior traditions would soon convince an entire galaxy that humans were the most dangerous species ever encountered. As the human fleet continued its approach toward first contact, both sides prepared for a meeting that would change the galaxy forever. The humans brought hope, friendship, and enough firepower to sterilize planets. The aliens brought terror, misunderstanding, and the growing certainty that they were about to meet their doom. Fleet Admiral Kyung-soo stood before the main display, watching alien signals fill his screens. "Helm, reduce speed to 1/4. We don't want to seem aggressive." If he'd known that reducing speed while commanding 12 planet-killing battleships would be interpreted as the tactical maneuvering of an invasion fleet, he might have made different choices. But humanity was about to learn that good intentions and massive weapons systems don't always mix well with first contact protocols. The stage was set for the greatest misunderstanding in galactic history. 3 days after humanity's first appearance on galactic sensors, the situation had grown worse instead of better. Captain Jae-won stood on the bridge of the Righteous Fury, studying the beautiful blue-green world that filled his main screen. The planet was clearly inhabited, with cities that sparkled like jewels across its surface. "What a beautiful world," Jae-won said to his first officer. "Let's show them we come in peace. Take us in for a friendly flyby." His navigation officer plotted a course that would bring all 12 human battleships past the planet in perfect formation. To Jae-won, this seemed like the most polite way to introduce themselves, organized, professional, and clearly non-threatening. On the surface of Kelthera Prime, alarms were screaming across every city. Defense Coordinator Kelhan watched the approaching human fleet with growing horror. 12 massive warships in attack formation, heading straight for his homeworld. "Evacuate the capital cities," Kelhan ordered, his voice cracking with fear. "All defensive platforms online. Send a distress call to the Galactic Council." The Keltharian people, descended from rabbit-like creatures, had evolved every instinct needed to recognize an approaching predator. The sight of the human battleships triggered millions of years of evolution, sending the entire planet into panic mode. Chief Engineer Boram was excited to make contact with the alien civilization. When the Keltharians sent a desperate communication asking about human intentions, she eagerly responded through the translation system. "We're explorers from Earth," Boram explained cheerfully. "These ships might look scary, but they're just built to be really tough. Our reactors alone can power a small city." The translation software, designed by a species that had never encountered weapons of mass destruction, processed her words through cultural filters. What the Keltharians heard was, "We are conquerors from Earth. These ships are built for destruction. Our weapons can destroy a small city." The Keltharian response was immediate evacuation of everything within 1,000 kilometers of the capital. Aboard the Indomitable Spirit, Dr. Minna was preparing her first cultural exchange presentation. She'd selected what she considered humanity's finest cultural achievements to share with their new alien friends. "I think they'll love Beethoven's Ninth Symphony," she told Admiral Kyung-soo. "And the 1812 Overture should really show them our artistic heritage." "Excellent choice," Kyung-soo agreed. "Music is the universal language." Neither of them considered how the 1812 Overture, with its explosive canon finale, might sound to species that had never used artillery in warfare. When the humans transmitted their cultural gift, alien intelligence analysts immediately classified it as some form of intimidation tactic involving coordinated weapons fire. Lieutenant Commander Haya Jin was equally enthusiastic about sharing human culture. Her presentation included footage from Earth's greatest sporting events: football games, hockey matches, boxing contests, and competitive eating championships. "Look how humans celebrate peaceful competition," she explained in her transmission to the increasingly panicked aliens. "We love to fight each other for fun." The alien receivers watched in mounting horror as humans voluntarily smashed into each other at high speed, engaged in gladiatorial combat on ice, and participated in endurance contests that looked like torture. Methods. When Hae-jin mentioned that humans fight for sport and compete over everything, 3 different species declared states of emergency. The Spiral Alliance convened an emergency war council after receiving the human cultural transmissions. General Krikstal, a seasoned military commander, studied the footage with disgust. "They're showing us their training methods," Krikstal announced to his staff. "Look at this football. They're teaching their warriors to work as units while engaging in hand-to-hand combat. And this hockey, clearly weapon training disguised as recreation." The boxing footage convinced him that humans practiced ritual combat to prepare for individual duels, while the competitive eating demonstrations looked like endurance training for survival under siege conditions. Back on the human ships, Cultural Officer Young-sik was preparing his own presentation about human philosophy and history. He wanted to show the aliens humanity's growth from primitive warfare to civilized cooperation. "I'll start with our ancient warrior traditions," Young-sik explained to his staff, "then show how we developed concepts of honor, sacrifice, and protecting the innocent." His presentation featured footage of historical battles, knights' codes of chivalry, military ceremonies honoring fallen soldiers, and documentaries about humanity's greatest military leaders. To Young-sik, this showed humanity's noble evolution from savage warfare to honorable protection of the weak. To the aliens, receiving the transmission, it looked like a species-wide obsession with death, violence, and military conquest. The footage of humans celebrating Memorial Day was interpreted as worship of war dead, while documentaries about military strategy looked like tactical briefings for future conquests. The Lepidan Confederacy evolved from prey species similar to Earth's rabbits, went into mass hibernation after Young-sik's casual mention that humans considered dying in battle glorious, and that their greatest heroes were those who sacrificed everything for others. To creatures whose deepest instinct was survival, the idea of seeking glorious death was incomprehensible and terrifying. On Nexus Station, the galaxy's diplomatic hub, emergency meetings ran around the clock. Ambassador Taeho found himself fielding panicked communications from 17 different species, all begging for protection from the approaching human fleet. "They're getting closer to the station," reported Intelligence Chief Yarg. 12 battleships maintaining formation. Our best analysts think they're planning to demonstrate their peaceful intentions by destroying something." The phrase peaceful intentions had become a source of galactic terror after human transmissions kept using it while displaying enough firepower to crack planets. War Speaker Thalax was mobilizing the Virex battle fleets, but even he knew it was hopeless. "We could throw every ship we have at them," he told the Council, "but their smallest escort vessel outguns our heaviest dreadnought." The crystalline hierarchy, ancient and wise, activated defense networks that hadn't been used in millennia. Their geometric ships began forming complex patterns around their core worlds, preparing for what they assumed would be humanity's inevitable attack. Meanwhile, on the human ships, the crews remained completely unaware of the chaos they were causing. Science Officer Eun-jung was excited about the readings she was getting from alien technology. "Admiral, their energy signatures are fascinating," she reported to Kyung-soo. "If we could take some detailed scans, it would help us understand their technology. We might even learn how to build better defenses." Kyung-soo approved the scanning mission, not realizing that his scientific curiosity would be interpreted as reconnaissance for military assault. When Eun-jung began active scanning of alien installations, every intelligence service in the galaxy concluded that the humans were mapping targets for their attack. Captain In-ho of the Unstoppable Dawn was conducting routine maintenance checks when he made the situation infinitely worse. His point defense systems automatically activated during the diagnostic, causing thousands of automated turrets to come online across the human fleet. To In-ho, it was just another boring systems check. To the aliens monitoring the fleet, it looked like the human ships had suddenly bristled with weapons, preparing for immediate combat. 3 ambassadors suffered nervous breakdowns, and the Hive Mind Collective declared a state of emergency that sent ripples of panic across half the galaxy. Communications Officer Woo Jin tried to ease tensions by sharing more human culture, specifically footage of Earth's greatest sporting championships. His carefully selected clips of the World Cup, the Olympics, and professional wrestling were intended to show humanity's love of friendly competition. The aliens watched in mounting horror as humans engaged in elaborate ritual combats, competed in contests of physical supremacy, and celebrated victories with tribal war chants. When Woo Jin explained that billions of humans gathered to watch these events, alien analysts concluded that the entire species was being conditioned for warfare. Through mass participation in combat training, Dr. Minna's anthropological presentation was the final straw. Her detailed explanation of human conflict resolution featured historical battles, medieval dueling traditions, and competitive eating contests. She cheerfully explained that humans fight for fun, compete over everything, and solve problems through contests. To the assembled alien diplomats, this confirmed their worst fears. Humanity was a species that viewed all social interaction as a prelude to violence. They fought for entertainment, competed over resources, and solved diplomatic problems through combat trials. Fleet Admiral Kyung-soo remained completely oblivious to the terror his fleet was causing. When he requested fuel and supplies from Nexus Station, his polite message was interpreted as a demand for tribute. His offer to demonstrate human defensive capabilities prompted the evacuation of 6 nearby systems, as aliens assumed this meant he planned to show them what human weapons could do to populated worlds. As the human fleet approached Nexus Station, the galaxy held its breath. Nexus Station hung in space like a crystal flower, its diplomatic spires reaching out in perfect harmony. It was the crown jewel of galactic civilization, a place where even the most warlike species came to solve problems with words instead of weapons. Station Commander Kixtal had overseen peaceful negotiations between literally hundreds of different races during his long career. Nothing had prepared him for the humans. 12 battleships requesting docking permission, his communications officer reported, voice shaking. They say they're here for friendly diplomatic talks. Kixtal's crystalline form flickered with colors that indicated extreme stress. In his 300 years of diplomatic service, he'd never seen warships that large approach Nexus Station. The smallest human vessel dwarfed the station's defensive platforms. Grant them outer docking ring access only, Kixtal decided, and evacuate all non-essential personnel to the emergency shelters. Fleet Admiral Kyung-soo studied Nexus Station with genuine admiration as his fleet approached. The structure was beautiful, clearly designed by species that valued art as much as function. This was exactly what humanity had hoped to find, proof that civilization could create beauty instead of just weapons. "Magnificent," he told his staff. "This is what we could build if we worked together." Captain Jae-won nodded agreement from his position on the fleet communication channel. "Sir, should we power down weapons to show peaceful intent? Keep everything at standard readiness," Kyung-soo replied. "We don't know what threats might be out here. Better safe than sorry." His reasonable precaution translated into 12 fully armed battleships, maintaining combat readiness while approaching the galaxy's most important diplomatic facility. To the aliens monitoring the approach, it looked like humanity was arriving ready for war. Science Officer Yun Young was practically vibrating with excitement as they got closer to the station. "Admiral, the energy readings from their reactor core are incredible. Can I run some scans? I'd love to understand how they built something so efficient." "Go ahead," Kyung-soo approved. "Any data we can gather will help us build better technology back home." Eun-jung began her scans with scientific enthusiasm, focusing her sensors on the station's exotic matter power core. To her, it was pure research. To the station's security chief, it looked like the humans were mapping critical systems before an attack. "They're scanning our reactor core," Security Chief Volthek reported to Kixtal. "Classic pre-assault reconnaissance." When Yoon-jung's excited comment about learning to build better defenses reached the station's translation systems, it confirmed Voltek's worst fears. The humans were studying the station's defenses to find weaknesses. Captain In-ho was conducting his regular systems maintenance aboard the Unstoppable Dawn. His engineering teams ran diagnostics on every system twice daily, a habit left over from humanity's early space exploration days when equipment failure meant death. "Running point defense diagnostic," announced Chief Petty Officer Soo-jin over the ship's communication system. Thousands of automated turrets across the human fleet came online simultaneously, their targeting systems sweeping space in perfect coordination. To In-ho's crew, it was just another boring maintenance routine they'd done 1,000 times. To the aliens watching, it appeared that the human ships had suddenly activated every weapon system they possessed. The sight of so many guns targeting everything in space caused immediate panic throughout Nexus Station. "Battle stations!" Volthek screamed into his communicator. "The humans are preparing to fire!" 3 alien ambassadors collapsed from shock, while the Hivemind Collective's representative began broadcasting distress signals that reached 17 different star systems. Emergency evacuation protocols activated across the station as thousands of diplomats fled toward escape pods. Communications Officer Woo Jin was trying to ease tensions by sharing what he considered humanity's finest cultural achievements. His presentation included the greatest moments from human sports: the World Cup finals, Olympic ceremonies, professional wrestling championships, and marathon competitions. "These events bring our whole species together," Woo Jin explained cheerfully. Over the communication channels, billions of humans watch these contests. They show how we settle our differences through competition instead of war. The aliens watched footage of humans engaging in ritualistic combat while massive crowds cheered for blood. The Olympic torch ceremonies looked like religious war preparations, while the wrestling matches appeared to be gladiatorial training. When Woo Jin mentioned that billions of humans participated in these events, alien analysts concluded that the entire species was being conditioned for mass warfare. Dr. Minna was finally getting her chance to present human anthropology to a galactic audience. She'd prepared her materials carefully, wanting to show how humanity had evolved from primitive warfare to sophisticated civilization. "Human conflict resolution has a long and noble history," she began, activating her holographic displays. "From ancient warrior codes to medieval concepts of honor, we've developed complex systems for protecting the innocent." Her presentation featured the Spartan warrior tradition, medieval knights defending the weak, samurai codes of honor, and modern military ceremonies celebrating sacrifice for others. To Dr. Minna, this showed humanity's growth from savage violence to noble protection. To the terrified alien audience, it looked like a species-wide obsession with death, combat, and military glory. When she explained that humans considered dying for others the highest honor, the pacifist Ethereal Consortium Collective fainted in horror. The situation deteriorated further when Dr. Minna began explaining human competitive traditions. Her examples included ancient Olympic Games, medieval tournaments, Renaissance dueling customs, and modern competitive eating contests. "Humans compete over everything," she said with obvious pride. "Food, sports, intellectual challenges, artistic achievement. Competition drives us to excellence." The aliens interpreted this as confirmation that humans viewed all interaction as contest preparation. When Dr. Minna cheerfully mentioned that humans fight for fun and compete to the death in some historical contexts, Several species began evacuating their home systems. Cultural attaché Young Sik added his own presentation about human philosophy and values. He wanted to show the aliens humanity's commitment to protecting the weak and defending justice. The greatest human heroes are those who stand between danger and innocence, Young Sik explained, showing footage of military ceremonies, police memorial services, and firefighter training exercises. We believe some things are worth fighting for, even dying for. To Young Sik, this demonstrated humanity's noble commitment to service and sacrifice. To the aliens, it confirmed that humans were a warrior species that glorified death in combat and sought out opportunities for violence. His presentation included quotes from human military leaders, footage of war memorials, and documentaries about soldiers who had died protecting others. Every image reinforced the alien conclusion that humanity was a species bred for war. The crisis reached its peak when engineering specialist Sang Ho made a routine report about reactor efficiency. "All power systems running at optimal levels," he announced. "We could maintain current energy output for months, even under combat conditions." His casual mention of combat conditions sent shockwaves through Nexus Station's monitoring systems. Combined with the active weapon scans and cultural presentations about warfare, it seemed like the humans were announcing their readiness for prolonged military operations. Station Commander Kixtal found himself facing the greatest diplomatic crisis in galactic history. The humans were clearly preparing for something, but their messages were so contradictory that no one could figure out what they actually wanted. "They claim to be peaceful," Kixtal told the Emergency Council meeting, "but they arrive with enough firepower to destroy the station 10 times over. They say they want friendship, but they're conducting weapons scans and broadcasting war propaganda." Ambassador Tejo was fielding panicked communications from across the galaxy. The Zephyrian Collective was evacuating their border worlds. The crystalline hierarchy had activated ancient defense networks. Even the warlike Vrex Empire was reconsidering their aggressive policies after seeing what human, peaceful exploration looked like. "Maybe we should just give them whatever they want," suggested the representative from the Peaceful Assembly. "If they want tribute, we'll pay it. If they want territory, we'll negotiate." "But what do they want?" Kixtal asked desperately. "They haven't made any demands. They just keep talking about friendship and cultural exchange while pointing planet-killing weapons at us." Fleet Admiral Kyung-Soo remained completely unaware of the terror his presence was causing. He was reviewing Dr. Minah's cultural presentations with satisfaction, believing they showed humanity's best qualities to their new alien neighbors. "Excellent work, Doctor," he told her. "I'm sure they appreciate learning about human values and traditions." Outside Nexus Station, 12 human battleships maintained their patient vigil, their crews excited about making new friends. Inside the station, the greatest diplomatic minds in the galaxy prepared for what they were certain would be humanity's ultimatum for surrender. The galaxy's first encounter with humanity was about to reach its breaking. The first wave of Devourer ships appeared on the edge of rimward space like a nightmare made real. Their bioships were living vessels that fed on metal and energy, growing larger and more dangerous with every world they consumed. For 3,000 years, they had been the galaxy's greatest terror, a nomadic species that appeared without warning, devoured everything useful, and vanished back into the void. Captain Zethmar of the Keltharian Defense Force watched his sensors with growing horror. 47 bioships approaching the civilian colonies. They'll reach the populated systems in 6 hours. The timing couldn't have been worse. Most of the galaxy's defensive fleets had been repositioned to monitor the human fleet at Nexus Station, leaving the rim dangerously exposed. The Devourer attack caught everyone completely unprepared. Fleet Admiral Kyung-Soo was reviewing cultural exchange protocols when the emergency transmission reached his flagship. The message was desperate, panicked, and crystal clear. Innocent. People were about to die. "Admiral," Communications Officer Wu Jin reported, "we're receiving distress calls from something called the Rimward Colonies. Multiple species under attack by hostiles designated Devourers." Kyung-Soo studied the tactical display with growing concern. The enemy fleet was massive, moving toward populated worlds filled with civilians. The local defense forces were hopelessly outnumbered. "Any galactic military response?" he asked. "Negative, sir. The nearest fleet units are days away." Kyung-Soo didn't hesitate. All ships, emergency deployment to rimward space. Maximum speed. Sir, his first officer said carefully, we don't have authorization from the Galactic Council for military action. There are civilians dying, Kyung-soo replied simply. That's all the authorization I need. Captain Mi-young of the battleship Eternal Vigilance received her orders with grim satisfaction. Her ship was the fleet's fastest, and she pushed the engines beyond safe limits to reach the combat zone first. Engineering, I need everything you can give me, she told her crew. There are people counting on us. Chief Engineer Dong-hyun didn't argue about safety protocols. He began overriding power limiters, channeling dangerous amounts of energy into the drive systems. We'll beat the rest of the fleet there by 30 minutes, he promised. Meanwhile, Tactical Coordinator Sung Min was calculating intercept courses for the entire human fleet. The math was complex. 12 battleships moving to engage 47 hostile vessels while protecting civilian populations across multiple star systems. It's going to be close, Sung Min reported. The Devourers will reach the outer colonies before we can establish a defensive perimeter. Then we improvise, Kyung-soo decided. We put our ships between the hostiles and the civilians no matter what it costs us. At Nexus Station, the aliens watched in stunned disbelief as the human fleet suddenly changed course and accelerated toward the combat zone. Station Commander Kixtal stared at his tactical display in confusion. Where are they going? He asked his staff. The rimward colonies, Intelligence Chief Volthek replied. The same systems under Devourer attack. A terrible realization swept through the station's leadership. The humans weren't heading toward the battle, they were heading toward helpless civilian populations, while the colony's defenders were distracted fighting the Devourers. They're using the Devourer attack as cover, Volthek concluded with horror. Classic predator behavior, strike when the prey is already under attack. The first human ship to reach rimward space was the Eternal Vigilance. Captain Mi-young arrived to find Devourer bioships already feeding on orbital platforms around the outer colonies. The sight of the alien monsters consuming civilian infrastructure triggered every protective instinct humanity had developed over millennia of warfare. Target the largest bioship, Mi-young ordered. All weapons, maximum yield. The Eternal Vigilance opened fire with every gun it possessed. Kinetic projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed slammed into the lead Devourer vessel, punching through bio-armor that had shrugged off centuries of galactic weapons. The Devourer ship writhed in apparent agony as human projectiles tore through its living hull. Other bioships immediately turned toward this new threat, abandoning their feeding to investigate what had dared attack them. They're taking the bait, Mi-young reported to the fleet, drawing them away from the civilian targets. Commander Hae-won was piloting the unstoppable Dawn through a debris field when the rest of the human fleet arrived. The massive battleships moved with surprising grace, their human pilots threading the needle between enemy vessels and friendly installations. I've never seen ships that large maneuver like that, reported Captain Velkos of the Keltharian Defense Force. They're flying those battleships like fighter craft. Chief Weapons Officer Yan-Su coordinated the human fleet's firepower with ruthless efficiency. Every Devourer ship faced not one or two targeted shots, but entire salvos of projectiles launched from multiple human vessels. Concentrate fire on individual targets, Yan-Su ordered. Don't let them adapt to our weapons. The Devourers had never encountered anything like human military doctrine. Galactic warfare was typically fought with energy weapons and defensive shields, elegant and precise. Human warfare was brutal, overwhelming, and utterly relentless. Engineering. Specialist Sang-ho made the decision that turned the tide of battle. When his ship's weapons began overheating from continuous fire, he rerouted power from life support and artificial gravity to keep the guns firing. Sir, he reported to his captain, I can give you 50% more firepower, but we'll be running on emergency life support. Do it, Captain In-ho replied without hesitation. We can hold our breath longer than they can hold together. The Bay. Human fleet's firepower display was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Each battleship unleashed destruction on a scale that defied galactic military understanding. The Devourers, who had terrorized civilizations for millennia, found themselves facing weapons that treated their bio-armor like paper. Dr. Min-ah was monitoring communications from the bridge of the Indomitable Spirit when she began to understand what was happening. The panicked alien transmissions weren't about fear of humanity, they were about fear for humanity. "Admiral," she said quietly, "I think we've been misunderstanding each other." "How so?" Kyung-soo asked, not taking his eyes off the tactical display. "They're not afraid we'll attack them. They're afraid of our ships because they don't understand why we built them. They think weapons this powerful must be for conquest." Kyung-soo glanced at her briefly. "And? They don't realize we built them to protect people." The battle reached its climax when the Devourer fleet recognized they were facing something completely outside their experience. These weren't the elegant, restrained defenders they'd fought for centuries. These were predators designed to destroy other predators. Captain Jae-won of the Righteous Fury led the final assault against the Devourer command ship. His vessel took terrible damage from bioweapon attacks, but he pressed the attack until the enemy flagship was nothing but drifting organic debris. "All Devourer vessels are withdrawing," Tactical Coordinator Sung-min reported. "They're retreating toward deep space." For the first time in galactic history, the Devourers had been not just defeated, but completely routed. The survivors fled, in obvious terror, abandoning their feeding grounds to escape the human fleet. The aftermath of the battle left the galaxy in stunned silence. Across rimward space, civilian populations watched in amazement as the massive human ships began rescue operations. The same vessels that had just unleashed planet-killing firepower were now carefully extracting survivors from damaged stations. Chief Medical Officer Yoon-suk deployed her teams across multiple colony worlds, offering aid to anyone who needed it. The sight of heavily armed humans gently treating alien wounded began to change perceptions across the galaxy. "They could have demanded anything," whispered Captain Velkos to his crew. "Payment, territory, tribute. Instead, they're giving away medical supplies." At Nexus Station, the alien leadership struggled to understand what they'd witnessed. The humans had ignored. The silence that followed the Devourer retreat was different from any quiet the galaxy had ever known. For 3 days, no ships moved between systems, no trade routes operated, and no diplomatic messages crossed space. Everyone was trying to understand what they had witnessed. Ambassador Tae-ho stood in his private quarters aboard Nexus Station, staring out at the human fleet. The massive battleships hung in space like sleeping giants, their weapon systems powered down for the first time since their arrival. For the first time in weeks, they looked peaceful. His communication console had been ringing constantly for hours. Every species in the galaxy wanted to talk to humanity, but not because they were afraid anymore. "Ambassador," his aide said quietly, "the peaceful assembly of herbivorous worlds is requesting an urgent meeting. They want to hire human ships for protection." Tae-ho nodded slowly. It was the 15th such request that day. The crystalline hierarchy wanted human patrols around their trade routes. The Zephyrian Collective was offering exclusive mining rights in exchange for a permanent human base. Even the proud Vrex Empire had sent subtle inquiries about mutual defense agreements. Captain Jin Woo of the battleship Sacred Guardian was reading through similar requests in his ready room. His communications officer had given up trying to log all the incoming messages from alien governments. "Captain," Lieutenant So-jin reported, "we have formal requests from 12 different species asking for protection services. The Spiral Alliance is offering to build us a naval base. The Keltharians want to hire us as permanent system defenders." Jin Woo set down the data pad and rubbed his tired eyes. 3 weeks ago, they wanted us to go away. Now they want us to stay forever. "Can you blame them?" So-jin asked. "When was the last time anyone defeated the Devourers so completely?" The answer was never. For 3,000 years, the Devourers had been an unstoppable force of nature. Civilizations built their entire defense strategies around hiding from them or evacuating when they appeared. The idea of actually fighting them and winning was beyond galactic imagination. Chief Diplomat Yoon-ha was working around the clock to handle the sudden flood of diplomatic opportunities. Her office aboard the Indomitable Spirit had become the most important location in known space, with alien ambassadors waiting in line for meetings. "The Ethereal Consortium is offering us their most advanced meditation techniques," her assistant reported. "The Hive Mind Collective wants to share their distributed intelligence technology. Everyone wants to be humanity's friend now." Yoon-ha smiled tiredly. The same species that had evacuated systems to avoid human contact were now competing to offer them gifts and treaties. The transformation was remarkable, but it also created new challenges. Cultural attaché Seung-ho was finally getting positive responses to his presentations about human philosophy. The same lectures that had terrified aliens 3 weeks ago were now being studied as examples of humanity's noble warrior code. They understand now, Seung-ho told Dr. Minna during their daily briefing. When I talked about humans protecting the innocent, they thought I meant we conquered the weak. Now they realize I meant we defend the defenseless. Dr. Minna was revising her entire approach to xenobiology based on what they'd learned. We made assumptions about their assumptions, she said. We thought universal concepts like protection and strength would translate directly. We didn't realize they'd never encountered a species that built weapons for defense instead of conquest. The breakthrough in understanding came during a joint meeting between human and alien anthropologists. The aliens finally explained their confusion about human military culture, while the humans clarified their actual intentions. Your ships are so powerful that we assumed they must be for attacking, explained xenobiologist Carvel of the Christek Republic. In our experience, only conquerors build weapons that can destroy planets. But that's exactly why we built them so powerful, replied Dr. Minna. We wanted to make sure nothing could threaten the people we're protecting. The bigger the threat, the bigger the shield we build against it. Fleet Admiral Kyung-soo found himself in the unusual position of being the galaxy's most popular military commander. Requests for his fleet services came from every corner of civilized space, but he was carefully selective about accepting them. We're not mercenaries, he explained to his senior staff during their planning meeting. We help those who can't help themselves. That's always been our mission. Captain Mi-young raised an important point. Sir, if we accept too many commitments, we'll spread the fleet too thin. 12 ships can't protect an entire galaxy. Then we'll teach them to protect themselves, Kyung-soo decided. We share our technology, train their crews, and help them build defenses that work. The decision to share human military technology with alien civilizations was controversial among some Earth governments, but Kyung-soo had support from the highest levels. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, and that place was as protectors and teachers. Commander Haiwan was assigned to work with Keltharian engineers on upgrading their defense systems. The rabbit-like aliens were eager students, though they struggled with human concepts of aggressive defense. You want us to put weapons on civilian ships? Asked Engineer Pelthan in confusion. Not weapons, Haiwan corrected. Defense systems, so they can protect themselves until help arrives. The distinction was important to humans, but difficult for prey species to understand. Humans saw no contradiction between peace and preparation for war, but species that had evolved as prey animals struggled with the concept of fighting back. Chief Engineer Boram was leading a team to design scaled-down versions of human defensive technology for alien use. The challenge was creating systems powerful enough to be effective, but simple enough for non-military species to operate. Most of them have never built weapons more powerful than police stunners, she explained to her engineering team. We need to give them something they can understand and maintain. The solution was elegant. Automated defense platforms that required minimal crew training, but could provide significant protection against raiders and minor threats. For larger threats like the Devourers, the platforms would serve as early warning systems to call for human assistance. The formal establishment of humanity's role in galactic affairs came during a historic session of the Galactic Council. For the first time in the Council's history, every member species voted unanimously on a single resolution. Station Commander Kixtall read the declaration with obvious emotion. By unanimous consent of all member civilizations, humanity is granted the sacred role of protector species, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. The title had never existed before because no species had ever demonstrated both the capability and willingness to protect others without demanding territory or tribute in return. Humanity's actions during the Devourer crisis had proven they were uniquely suited for this role. Ambassador Tae-ho formally accepted the position on behalf of humanity. We are honored by your trust, he said simply. We promise to use our strength only in defense of those who cannot defend themselves. The ceremony was followed by the signing of the Nexus Accords, a treaty that established humanity's rights and obligations as galactic protectors. Human ships would have free passage through all member territories and access to resources needed for their defensive mission. In return, they pledged to respond to threats against any member civilization. Captain J1 of the Righteous Fury was among the first to receive a new assignment under the Accords. His ship would patrol the trade routes between the Spiral Alliance and the Crystalline Hierarchy, protecting merchant vessels from pirates and raiders. "It's strange," he told his first officer as they departed Nexus Station. 3 weeks ago they were afraid we'd attack them. Now they're paying us to attack their enemies." "Not attack," his officer corrected with a smile. "Protect. There's a difference." The distinction mattered to humans, even if aliens sometimes missed it. Human ships didn't hunt for targets to destroy. They positioned themselves between threats and innocence. Their weapons existed to deter aggression, not to enable it. Dr. Mina's final report on First Contact protocols became required reading at every diplomatic academy in the galaxy. Her key insight was simple but profound. Assumptions about motivations could be catastrophically wrong, especially between species with different evolutionary backgrounds. "Humans build the most powerful weapons in the galaxy," she wrote. "Not because they love war, but because they love peace so much they're willing to fight anything that threatens it." 6 months after First Contact, the galaxy had transformed. Human battleships patrolled shipping lanes that had been abandoned to pirates for centuries. Colonies that had lived in constant fear of raiders now slept peacefully under human protection. The Devourers, once the galaxy's greatest nightmare, had retreated to the deepest edges of space. Fleet Admiral Kyung-soo stood on the bridge of the Indomitable Spirit, watching his fleet take positions around a newly established trade hub. The massive human ships looked like guardian angels, their weapons trained outward toward the darkness of space. "Status report," he requested from his staff. "All defensive positions manned," reported his tactical officer. "Long-range sensors clear of hostile contacts. The shipping lanes are secure."